Good morning. Hello, everybody, and we are continuing with our Rays and Initiations webinar commentary. We're beginning our work on program number 24 in the second part of the Rays and Initiations book by the Tibetan teacher Djwhal Khul through Alice Bailey. We're on page 436, and a very important thing was said at the end of program number 23. We were talking about accuracy in the registration of that which comes from the interior planes, accuracy of registration within the brain, a true interpretation and a correct recognition of things as they are. And we were talking about the idea that psychics and those who are not disciples go wrong because it takes time intelligently to interpret and truly register that which the perceiving consciousness is contacted. And then this very important statement which points to the activation of the intuition on the fourth solar plane or systemic plane, the Buddhic plane, and especially on the fourth level of that plane, when the time factor no longer controls the interpretations registered by the brain are infallibly correct. So a major piece of information here, and this has to do, I think, much with the true initiate being the initiate of the third degree, with the Buddhic plane being contacted at that point, with the mechanism of the head forming a quite completed triangle, with the evocation of the third eye in reasonably functional condition, and with the overcoming of time and illusion of time and space at that point, at least a reasonable a functional overcoming of the time-space illusion. So it will be, in fact, Buddhic impression from the fourth plane related to the fourth ray, one of the names of which is the mountain whereon time dies. So the ability to perceive with immediacy that which descends in a packet of information from the Buddhic plane will occur beginning at the third degree in a rather continuous way, and then the registrations from the higher planes will be, what he says, infallibly correct. So this is the reason why one must achieve the initiate consciousness in order for truly correct registration to descend from the inner planes, and then also the interpretations of the mind as they descend into the brain will be infallibly correct, or at least far more correct than they could have been before. Perhaps at the fourth degree, I would say almost inevitably at the fourth degree, the intuition will be still more activated, and the ability to receive intuitive content directly and without distortion will be still more enhanced. So we have to ponder this. I've just given a little bit of initial pondering about it, and when he says, I've given you a major piece of information, you don't want to pass by too quickly. It's taking time, to interpret that which is registered usually. The time factor is overcome, and the immediacy of the intuition connected very much with the planet Uranus and also with the planet Neptune. The immediacy of the intuition is registered. It may take some time to disentangle or to break out, or in some way to adjust the impact of the intuition to the terms in which the mind usually thinks. That may take some time. In other words, a person can receive a lightning-like realization which has to be adapted to time and space. And maybe the first adaptation occurs from the realm of the higher mind, and the second more specific adaptation, or the more specific adaptation, from the level of the concrete mind. So we have to train ourselves as intuitives to receive directly that which is, no matter how we then adapt it to present conditions. Okay, now we can, excuse me, go a little further. You will see, therefore, that in the earlier initiatory process, the factor of time is noted by the initiate and also by the presenting master, who has to be aware of the effects of time in the disciple's consciousness, the disciple to whom the master may be presenting new information or facilitating the access of information. So these are initiations of the threshold, and the master must also be aware of the time process in the disciple, because this will condition the manner in which the disciple processes that which the master presents. We recall Master DK saying that his master had, or the master of a certain disciple, we assume that it was Master DK, presented a piece of information to be pondered, that all ashrams are found upon the Antakarana, and that it took this particular disciple about, was it 2 years or so, to come to an understanding of that which had been presented. It was not an immediate intuitive apprehension. So the factor of time has to be considered, and things work their way through into the physical brain according to a certain process, but it is an ever-accelerating process as the disciple intensifies his point of tension. An instance of a slow permeation of information from the plane of initiation, which is the, in this case, let's call it the higher mental plane, because initiations are given within the causal body, we are told, at least the initiations up to the fourth. So an instance of a slow permeation of information from the plane of initiation to the physical brain can be seen in the fact that very few aspirants and disciples register the fact that they have already taken the first initiation, the birth of the Christ, in the cave of the heart. I guess it is a presumption because of what DK has said, but how many actually remember the taking of that information? They may have taken it is evidenced by their deliberate treading of the way, by their love of the Christ, no matter by what name they may call him, and by their effort to serve and help their fellow men. These are more evidences of the first initiation. There are some other indications given, and I have them, well, maybe, let's just say, I can go to them and then add to them. For instance, let's go here to, hate to take a little detour, but sometimes it, well, it's not really a detour, it's an amplification. A, B extracts, first initiation, and first and second initiation defining characteristics, and here they are. They should assume, the members of the new group of world servers, that all those who truly love their fellow men, who are interested in the esoteric teaching and who seek to discipline themselves in order to attain greater beauty of life, are initiate and have undergone the first initiation. And then added to that, when they discover those who are seeking mental polarization, they haven't necessarily achieved it, because even at the second degree, one does not really achieve that. All those who are seeking mental polarization and who evidence a desire and aspiration to think and to know, coupled with the distinguishing marks of those who have taken the first initiation, they can, in all probability, safely assume that such people have taken the second initiation or are on the verge of doing so. And that really meant, in fact, so many of those who were working with the Tibetan and were in his ashramic groups, peripheral ashramic groups. I'm going to add this, okay, right here from page 667 from R and I 667. So we add to the idea of the love of the fellow men and interested in the true esoteric teaching and disciplining themselves, we add to that their deliberate treading of the way and their love of the Christ. So I'm going to, excuse me, add to this something additional, which will help me the next time I come to it. I'd like to remember these distinguishing characteristics. Now we have 5. So we've added to the ones listed on page 437, 667. We've added to that the evidence. Oh, let's see, wait a second here. I think, yes, I think I've done that correctly. Okay. We've added to what is on 667, and which I have frequently quoted, we've added the fact that they have a deliberate method of treading the way, which means they deliberately and willfully decide to tread the way, and they hold to it. And they have a love of the Christ, no matter by what name they may call him. And that's very important, because there are some world philosophies and world religions that do not acknowledge the Christ in the same way, but they encourage a deep rapport with the love principle. So they are initiates of the first degree. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to get this, there we go. All right. They are still, however, surprised when told that the first initiation lies behind them. This is due entirely to the factor of time, leading to their inability to bring through past events with accuracy, and by a false humility as well, inculcated by the Christian church as it attempts to keep people subjugated by the sin idea, so they will not offer conflict to the way in which the church is being conducted by its priesthood, and by the intensely forward-looking anticipatory consciousness of the average aspirant. So we have here 3 reasons why registration of the first initiation is often not does not often occur in those who have taken this first initiation. So the factor of time has to be brought in here, and we have to realize in this sense that many of us may have accomplished much more interiorly than we consciously realize at the present condition, or through the present condition of our consciousness. So we do not bring through past events with accuracy. In fact, we don't remember them. That's really what this is all about. Okay. And the false humility which holds, by means of which we ourselves, having adopted the inculcation of the church, hold ourselves low and dismiss the idea that we may have taken that degree, and also by the fact that we do not look backwards, because we are always looking forward towards that which may occur, and we do not properly assess that which may have occurred in the past. So when a true perspective and a balanced point of view, Libra comes in there, and Libra is one of those signs which is so important at the first degree, involving as it does the sacral center and its transfer to the throat, and the third ray which Libra brings in. When a true perspective and a balanced point of view have been attained, and some awareness of at least some awareness of the eternal now is beginning to penetrate their understanding. It may not be the full awareness. It may not be the full awareness. It cannot be at first, and I often say to my friends who suspect that all that can be achieved of realization of being can be achieved by man, I say, well, what about the realization of the planetary logos, who is many mahakalpas ahead of man in his realization of the solar logos, or greater logoi? Will each one of them realize being in exactly the same way that man realizes being? No man is really qualified to say so, because they have not yet attained that stage. But speculation about the possibility of apprehension of these greater beings can at least be made, and according to the law of analogy, we would expect their apprehension of pure being to be still greater. So, when a true perspective and a balanced and perhaps not fanatically forward-looking anticipatory consciousness, a balanced point of view has been attained, then some awareness of the eternal now, and some awareness of the eternal now is beginning to penetrate into their understanding. Then the past, the present, and the future will be lost to sight in the consciousness of the inclusiveness of the moment that is. Well, he's speaking of very deep things here, and he's inviting us into states of consciousness which are not so strictly ruled by time and sequence. Okay. Then the limitations of time will be ending, and the law of karma will be negated. Time, karma, and Saturn are all related, and through the immediacy of intuitive apprehension, we will know what we must do, and we'll do it with accuracy. Of course, the law of karma also applies to still greater beings, so perhaps the Tibetan is implying here that the law of karma as it applies to man will be ending, because the human being, the initiate of the fourth degree at this point, will be overcoming the need to reincarnate, and so often that need to reincarnate is subject to karma which has been generated and has to be balanced or expiated. The dual life of the disciple will then be ended, and will give place to the cosmic dualism of the master. And what is that cosmic dualism? The master is free from the limitations of time, though not of space, because space is an eternal entity. This is, I find this correcting my own thoughts as I go along here. I find this something that I will have to review, and perhaps if we are all wise, we will review this carefully. There are lower apprehensions of space which may be ended, but not the great self-consciousness of the universal logos, which is, I would say, the penultimate version of space. There is still a greater understanding of space, and that is that of the absolute itself. Space, with all capital letters, as we human beings can represent it, and the absolute have often been considered equivalent. But why this is so, we would have to ponder. I really want to read this again. We second-rate types, we try to ponder until fuller understanding comes. So I frequently will reread what has been read for a deeper penetration. into the understanding. So, coming back here, initiates, even of the first degree, can begin to approach an understanding of the things here discussed. They are surprised to be told the first initiation lies behind them. Perhaps, in the case of a number of initiates who maybe are still more advanced, the Christ has not been the administrator of the first degree. He is Neptune, he is the administrator at this time, and perhaps for the last 2,500 years or so, he has been the administrator of the first degree, but there was a time when the Buddha was the world teacher and would have been the administrator, to fewer, of course, because not so many were capable of approaching it, the administrator of the first degree, and well, initiates who have by now certainly achieved the first degree was administered by whom? By whom was the first degree administered to the Christ? By whom was it administered to the present masters? Long ago, let's say Joshua was a second degree initiate, some 4,000 years ago, and the Christ had not yet been ascending. Well, he had not yet risen to the stage of world teacher. The Christ could not have been the administrator of the first degree for such a being as the one who is presently the Master Jesus, though he was, interestingly, implicitly involved in offering the possibility of the fourth degree to the Master Jesus. And also Joshua, as the high priest, Master Jesus as the high priest, achieved the third degree. Again, well, it would have had to have been Sanat Kumara. We're talking about initiations of the threshold, and the first and second initiations of the threshold are the ones which the world teacher administers. So many of us may think we are, at this present time, initiates of the first degree, but it takes a long time, many lives, to move towards the second degree. So for some of us who are on the verge of taking the second degree, let us say at this time, the Christ will be the administrator, or will be the one who confers the second degree. But did we take the first degree so long ago that the Christ could not have been the one who conferred that degree upon us? This is really worth pondering. So in any case, many do not realize that, well, and then would it have been, so to speak, the Buddha as the head of the hierarchy for 2,500 years, probably approximately from the year 3000 to the year 500 AD or so. So the factor of time is responsible for this failure to register the memory of the first initiation, and they cannot bring through past events with accuracy, but one day, of course, it will be realized. Also, a false humility, which takes from their consideration or removes or expels from their consideration the possibility that they may have taken the first degree, because it is considered to be spiritual to hold oneself low and not to have a truly accurate vision of who one is. This is a vision which the Tibetan definitely attempts to inculcate. And by this forward-looking anticipatory consciousness, which, let's just say, which takes attention away from past accomplishments. When a true perspective and a balanced point of view have been attained, and let's just say when time is usually considered is being overcome, and some awareness of the eternal now is beginning to penetrate into their understanding. And I think, many of us on different rays have different ways of bringing that type of understanding into our consciousness. Then the past, the present, and the future will be lost to sight in the consciousness of the inclusiveness of the moment that is. Our concentration then will be within that type of consciousness, and somehow the moment that is will somehow include the past, present, and the future. And this will be at a much higher point of tension than previously achieved. And then the limitations of time will be ending, not immediately, of course, it's a dawning process, and the law of karma will be negated, at least as far as it is applied to the human being, because rapidly we are ceasing to be, strictly speaking, the human being. We may be the human monad without being a member of the fourth kingdom of nature. It is at present so closely related to past and future. Okay, and maybe there's a different way that the law of karma can be applied to beings with a higher consciousness. I oftentimes look to some of the masters of the wisdom today who are involved in trying to solve the world crisis, and I think that on a higher turn of the spiral, it is part of their karma to do so. The dual life of the disciple will then be ended, giving place to the cosmic dualism of the master. And the higher of the pairs of opposites there will no longer be the soul, certainly. The higher of the pairs of opposites will be something else. Higher of the pairs of opposites will be far higher than the soul. The monad, perhaps, or with its identification with the planetary logos. That's an aspect of the planetary logos. The master is free from the limitations of time. Space is vast, of course, though not of space, because space is an eternal entity. And this is not space as we usually conceive of it, as an interval between perceptions. Or, I call every factor that we register a perception. If I look at this lamp, if I look at this computer, those are two different perceptions, and I seem to perceive space between them. We are not talking about that type of space. We are talking about a great, in one respect, a great registration of consciousness by the universal logos. The universal logos having a type of self-consciousness which is space. But this is, I say, only the penultimate registration of space. There is the space that is the eternal, abiding, in a way, changeless, infinite entity, the absolute. So, again, I do not feel especially inclined to leave this paragraph because it is so very deep. The master does, however, is free from the limitations of time, as the human being usually perceives it. But just think, the greatest measure of time is the great breath, and this is the coming into existence of universes and their subsiding into the universal pralaya and their absorption into the absolute. And from that archetype of all time, certainly the master is not free, nor do I think that any being in cosmos is free of that, because without that archetype they would not even have been produced. The production of the universal logos, the one manifested entity, the one extruded entity, extruded from the absolute, is dependent upon this rhythm of the great breath. You will see, therefore, okay, let's see here. You will see, therefore, the great necessity for a constant emphasis at this stage in the training of the average aspirant on the need for alignment, because it is this alignment which allows this immediacy of intuitive apprehension. I think I'll put that down. Let's just say that correct alignment allows for the immediacy of intuitive apprehension, or for the creation of a channel of direct relation from the brain to the desired point of contact, whatever plane that may be. So without proper alignment, this straight channel will not exist. And this accuracy of perception in the brain will not exist. The accuracy of perception of that which transpires on the higher planes will not exist within the physical brain without proper alignment. So aspirants, disciples, even I suppose initiates attempting to relate to still higher planes will be trained in the appropriate kinds of alignment. The third meditation in the book Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, is a great alignment exercise, and it takes the meditator all the way to the monad. So it may seem a simple exercise, but it is something that we need to use and to apply to increase the likelihood of accurate registration of the higher planes within the physical brain. So it's called a trained alignment. And I'm just going to put here the need for alignment. You know, I tend to want to emphasize these so they jump out at one when one reviews. To this trained alignment must eventually be added the building of the antikarana. It's a form of alignment itself, and its subsequent use in the growing system of alignments. So ever higher alignments are possible, are necessary. Oh, how about spelling that? Are necessary, and the antikarana in its various phases must be included among the expanding system of alignments. Even when the monad reaches on the cosmic paths towards still higher sources, attempting to attune with still higher sources, the factor of alignment will be also present. And we can call it, it will still be an expansion of the antikarana, even though we might say that, well, at the 5th degree, the antikarana is somehow absorbed into the radiance of the sun, and certainly at the 6th degree, because the monad can be considered as the sun. Further antikaranas are possible. There are antikaranas that exist between planets, and I imagine between solar systems, lesser and greater, and on, and we will be participants in those kinds of antikaranas. They won't be the antikarana of something else. They will be our antikaranas by that time. But right now, we are working on a certain phase of the antikarana, which basically connects the mental unit with the monastic permanent atom and other areas within the spiritual triad. So, to this trained alignment must eventually be added the building of the antikarana. So the first trained alignment is with the soul. The first trained alignment is with the soul. And you know, if we were to look at this picture, we see that from the mental unit to the soul is a line which represents that type of alignment, and the soul thought will bring us further towards the monastic permanent atom, but a direct alignment, so-called bypassing that encapsulation of soul on the higher mental plane that we usually call the soul, is also possible, and that is what Master DK trains us to create. So to this trained alignment must eventually be added the building of the antikarana and its subsequent use in a growing system of alignments. We must be aware that alignment is a very great factor in our return, not only to the Father's home, but to the home of the ultimate Father of the universe, which we might call then the universal logos. These are deep matters. You know, I'm aware that I am simply giving some thoughts which it might be useful to think when attempting to interpret these ideas presented by the Tibetan. But of course, everyone will have to arrive at his or her own interpretation, and my thoughts may simply be a stimulus in that direction, hopefully not a distraction. The antikarana must be completed, and direct contact must be established with the spiritual triad by the time the third initiation is taken. Well, there we have a really, let's just say this is certainly the completion of the first phase of the antikarana per se. I mean, there is a kind of lower Saturnian antikarana which connects with the mental unit with the soul, and then kind of an interesting extension from the soul to the monastic per minute atom. But this is the first phase of completion of the type of antikarana which the Tibetan is teaching us to build through the antikaranic method in the rays and the initiations. We're going to be going over that, you know, because that is in the latter part of this book, the rays and initiations, and there's about 100 pages given to the building of the antikarana. Then follows the fourth initiation with its destruction of the egoic causal or soul body, owing to the complete fusion of soul and personality. And here we may, the angel of the presence is involved. Because when he talks about soul, you know, are we talking about we're not really talking about the causal body, we're talking about the soul per se. The angel of the presence is involved, and also the spiritual triad. One of my friends long ago said, well, don't you realize the spiritual triad is the angel of the presence? And of course that can be discussed and debated. It seems to me that the spiritual triad is really an extension of our own monad, and that the angel of the presence, well, at least the solar angel, is not our own monad per se. Anyway, the dual life of the disciple ends. So the third initiation, by the time the first phase of the antikarana proper, as we discussed it in relation to the method DK has given to us, is completed at the third degree, and then one can really enter the abstract mind and think within the abstract mind. And three minds have, in a sense, united. There are different types of minds which must unite under that particular word of power. Three minds unite, and even the atmic mind can be included. But at least the first three minds that must unite have united. Here, the man is soul infused, and he is an abstract thinker at the same time, and the triangle within the head, so to speak, or in relation to the head, the crown center, the adjacent center, and the alta major center have themselves completed a triangle, and the energy is circulating, and the third eye is being evoked into functional activity, and the so-called dispelling radiance of the healer is now functioning. So if we have not completed this first phase of the Antiquran, and if we cannot be the true abstract thinker, then we have not taken the third initiation, no matter how brilliant the concrete mind may be. Okay. All right, and then follows, maybe in the same incarnation, the fourth initiation. And notice egoic body, causal body, soul body. These are all about bodies and not about the soul itself. Okay, so these terms are about bodies for the soul and not about the soul itself. So we have to be very careful to discriminate between the soul, which for practical purposes is the higher ego, is the spiritual triad, and the soul itself. From another perspective, the soul is the solar angel present in the soul body or causal body as the angel of the presence. So soul is a very fluid term. We have to be careful what we mean when we use it. All right. Now we're going to talk about the dual existence of the master. And remember, just a little earlier, he told us how different the types of duality were. We began by looking at the idea that, how is it here? It comes right up here at the top. Yeah, that the dualism displayed by the master and that displayed by the disciple are not identical or one and the same thing at advancing points of distinction. As our consciousness rises, we will be able to make those types of distinctions which we failed to make earlier in the process. So it's a very interesting word, advancing points of distinction. These are perspectives which come to the advancing consciousness from which distinctions which were hitherto not discerned can be discerned. So points of discernment of distinction which come to the advancing consciousness, and then we realize that the dualism of the master and that of the disciple are not the same. And here he's going to probably tell us more about the dual existence of the master. We have learned something about the dual life of the disciple. And the technique of duality, of course, comes in with the dual life of the disciple. At first, that dualism may simply be soul and personality, but later it's the soul-infused personality and the triad. And then later still it's the soul-infused personality and the monad triad, considered as a unit. And eventually, of course, the duality leads into a temporary unity. All unities are temporary. I've sometimes looked at this, kind of picture of the advancing Kundalini, and there are always those moments of intersection when unity is achieved, but then there is the rising again into a new duality until a new state of unity is achieved. I suppose if I had more seventh ray in my nature, I would try to diagram all of this, but I'm trying to move on with this and feel a bit of a push behind me. I don't want to use the word hurry, although, that probably is the case. There is no rush, no hurry, yeah, in the lives of some, and yet there is no time to lose. The dual existence of the master. I would have you note here the difference between the two headings. I referred in one place to the dual life of the disciple, but in another to the dual existence of the master. And I think it's pretty clear those words did stand out for us, did they not? The dual life of the disciple, we don't talk about the dual existence of the disciple. And we're going to just emphasize these two factors. Okay. The disciple, that distinction is deliberate and intentional. So Master DK is always saying, read carefully. and pay strict attention to the words I use. Alice Bailey had a great command of the English language, so she was a very suitable instrument for Master Decay, who among the Eastern Masters knew English the best. I can't say that among the Western Masters he necessarily knew English the best, because Master R, as Francis Bacon, was truly a master of the English language. The disciple lives in the three worlds, and until the third initiation he demonstrates his livingness strictly in relation to the soul and the personality. So he's dealing with intelligence and love mostly, rather than adding to it the factor of being, which enters with the first conscious impact of the monad at the third degree. The disciple lives in the three worlds, and until the third initiation he demonstrates his livingness strictly in relation to the soul and the personality. Of course, one can begin to reach towards the monad following the second degree for various reasons. The number 2 and 6 are quite involved in those reasons. And some intimation of being and of monadic presence may come, but not the real fuller consciousness we're talking about, which is available at the third degree. And therefore strictly to the phenomenal world. He demonstrates his livingness strictly in relation to the soul and personality, and therefore strictly in relation to the phenomenal world and to the various levels of the dense cosmic physical plane. So we understand that the lower three worlds are the dense aspect of the cosmic etheric physical plane. The lower three worlds are the dense aspect of the cosmic physical plane. Well, the cosmic etheric physical plane, really, to be more accurate. That is where the dual life is lived. It's lived within the lower three worlds. And we have to learn eventually to abstract ourselves from these lower three worlds while still being able to deal with them in a useful manner. The master functions on the plane of being and demonstrates the fact that he eternally is, that he exists as a divine aspect upon the formless levels of the cosmic etheric plane. So the duality of the master is anchored in the world of being. Now, let's try to be accurate about what that might mean. Excuse me. He is anchored in the world of being. Now, this world of being, I've often thought, really begins at the monadic level. The master certainly has some monadic apprehension, but beingness, as we would normally interpret it, does begin within the livingness of the cosmic ethers. And so these worlds are very real to him. This is a very different matter to the life of the disciple, and to which little attention has been paid. So the master is functioning in the spiritual triad, consciously. The master is consciously functioning within the spiritual triad, and especially having achieved the fifth degree, is functioning quite fully on the atmic plane, which is the fifth from below. His conscious functioning within the realm of the monad will have to wait until Chohanship is achieved at the sixth degree, but certainly he has found himself living in quite accurate relationship to that which descends from the monad. The master functions on the plane of being. Well, let's call that the atmic plane at first. At first, let us call this, this is not the pure truth, but okay. At first, let us call this the atmic plane, and demonstrates the fact that he eternally is, and you would have to say, well, how? eternally is as a monad. It is the essence of the monad which eternally is, and that he exists as a divine aspect on the formless levels of the cosmic etheric plane. Actually, he exists, divinity is a term applied to the monad, so he can demonstrate this, but the fullness of demonstration is not the same as that of a Chohan. And how it is different I could not say, but it must be different. So all this is a very different matter to the life of the disciple, and to this little attention has been paid. Existence, being, essential life, dynamic energy, electric fire, all of them are distinctive of the higher initiations, and we might say from the fourth initiation onwards. The fourth initiation being, well, there is some monadic demonstration at the third initiation, but since the causal body is still very much existent at that time, we're not going to get any kind of fullness of electric fire. So existence, being, essential life, that is the essence of the monad, dynamic energy, that which the monad has, electric fire, are all of them distinctive of the higher initiations. They produce basic distinctions between their constitution and mode of life expression, and that of those who live, who are in process of becoming, who express quality, and who fuse and blend solar fire and fire by friction. So here, the impression from these types of energies will produce a very different type of life expression from the life expression of those who are in process of becoming, have not entered the world of being, that is, who express quality and who fuse, basic distinctions, and who fuse solar fire, fuse and blend solar fire and fire by friction. So here we have what is just described is the life of the disciple who is an initiate of the threshold. So our usual pursuits are much different from the kind of life. So the life we live is much different from the kind of life that is lived by the one who is under the impression of the monad that is the master and beyond, and even the fourth degree initiates who need no longer take incarnation is already coming under this electric fire which has basically destroyed the vehicle which the second aspect has produced. Being and existence are not the same. Well, and that, even existence can be discriminated from being, but let's just say that at this point they are being discussed in the same as the same. Being and existence are not the same as becoming and qualified appearance. So the Tibetan has said that he is an initiate into the mysteries of being, and that has to tell us something about him, about his status, and basically before he announced that he was a master, or before it, so to speak, leaked out that he was a master, he was giving us a hint that he was, in fact, a master of the wisdom. He simply presented himself as an initiate of a certain degree. So this statement is extremely important, and we have to discriminate the kind of duality that the master experiences from the kind of duality the disciple experiences, the dual life and the dual existence. So the higher part of that which the master is capable of demonstrating is anchored here in this world of being. He may, however, demonstrate in his Mayaparupa seemingly as a human being. So being and existence are not the same as becoming. or qualified existence. We know that appearance, qualified appearance. The soul is the quality of life, so we have life quality and appearance. Appearance relates to fire by friction and to demonstration in the lower worlds, and quality relates to the basic aspects of being, of which there are 7. And being and existence refers to the isness which we are. So it is largely a question of emphases. A master has synthesized within himself all for which the advancing disciple longs to express, or all which the advancing disciple longs to express, all that is possible as expansion, at least at the stage of the advancing disciple, plus an emphasis upon the dynamic life aspect, which is the monadic aspect, plus an ability to stand immovable in pure being. Here again, I find it hard to express that for which no words are to be found, at least no words are yet to be found. So he tells us we have to develop a new language. So these are the achievements of the master. Let's look at that again, because they are so very worthy of pondering. Anyway, let's just say the disciple is not anchored in being with respect to the higher aspect of duality which he demonstrates. Rather, it is the soul, or what we call the soul, or that encapsulation of soul we call the causal body, or the egoic lotus on higher mental plane. So it is largely a question of emphases. A master has synthesized within himself all for which the advancing disciple longs to express, all which the advancing disciple longs to express. Certainly the qualities of the Buddhic nature and the Atmic nature, all that is possible as expansion while a human being, plus an emphasis upon the dynamic life aspect, meaning the master emphasizes the monad. The master emphasizes the monad, and in the ashram he stands for the monad of that structure, plus an ability to stand immovable. That's the guru, one who truly cannot be moved out of identification as pure being, plus an ability to stand immovable in pure being. So, the extent to which the sense of being comes over us has to be assessed. Is it very intermittent? Is it decreasingly intermittent? Is it increasingly continuous? Is it finally continuous? Continuous identification as being. I suppose some apprehension of this comes at the 3rd degree, and the ability to realize oneself as being continuously is developing at the 3rd degree and functional at the 3rd degree. But to stand immovable in pure being, well, that's more for the master, and we might even say to stand immovable as pure being as still another step. To stand immovable as pure being is still another step, because then the identification is even greater. If you're in pure being, then there's you and pure being. If you're as pure being, then the only thing there is pure being, and you have identified then as pure being. So the realm of being, of the world of being, is open to the master. And as I said, I've often thought that really comes in fullness at the monadic level, but the master is so close to the monad that in a sense he is, though standing at the acme of humanity, he is still functioning under the direct impress of the monad, though perhaps not fully identified as the monad as the Chohan would be, and even more the Chohan of the 7th degree. Okay. This really runs so deep. I do understand why Mary Bailey considered this book to be, as she said, her Bible. Okay, we move on here to the next paragraph. This will be at least a 2-hour program. In the Master, all the divine aspects are proved capable of expression in accordance with this particular time. All the aspects available at this particular time, in this particular round, the 4th and chain, the 4th, reverting to the old symbolism of the secret doctrine, and through any particular racial expression. All the divine aspects, especially those that are now available. Those that are now available and necessary for expression. When the word divine is used, of course, we are dealing with that which refers to the spirit. But we are also talking about these larger ray energies which are available and working through the round and the chain and in a particular race and subrace. With these, the masters are familiar and are able to express. They are able to express these. These divine characteristics, viewed from the angle of time and space, are shewn in a definitely relative form. Later cycles and time periods will show these aspects in a still more perfected form. So, in this 4th round and on this 4th globe, in the 4th chain, only so much of the pure quality of these energies can be expressed. So we are nowhere near the completion of our planetary evolution, and the masters of this time, though far in advance of the masters of previous times, will not be as advanced as the masters of future times, nor as capable of full and pure expression as they will be of these same energies and energies added to them according to the needs of the time. These divine characteristics, viewed from the angle of time and space and not from their eternal existence in the world of being, are shewn in a definitely relative form, relative to the conditions in which we now exist. We can say that, our planet, relative to the conditions in which our planet now exists. Later cycles and time periods, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, etc., will show these aspects in a still more perfected form. And the matter through which these aspects express will be, of course, still more perfected. But the relativity of these matters does not concern us. This is that would be a very large speculation having to do with intricate planetary cycles of which we really know very little, only what the Tibetan has told us something about. The relativity of these matters does not really concern us, and the perfection is, from the angle of the human disciple today, exactly what we understand by perfection. Right. Now, well, actually, we're going to have a relative perfection, but good enough, in a sense, for this time and for the stage at which humanity now finds itself. The masters know, however, that a higher, deeper, and more intensive manifestation of divinity is potentially possible, but it causes them no concern or strain, no anxiety or fiery aspiration. They know, as no disciple can know, the workings of the law of inevitability. And so these things will work out in greater perfection, and they can abide in tranquility with that realization that forcing would do no good. And so often the disciple or the aspirant does not understand that forcing conditions beyond a certain point can do no good. It's even a factor of illusion to attempt to bring in certain energies and perspectives into certain contexts where they do not belong. So yes, there is relativity. Yes, there is a greater possibility of perfected expression than we are capable of today, and that even the masters of the wisdom are capable of today. But okay, they abide in calmness forever unperturbed, that quality of the Christ. The higher, deeper, more intensive manifestation will occur. This they know. The law of inevitability according to the purpose and the plan. Okay. This law of inevitability, I want to make that even bigger. I think it's so important because we can learn something from it. This law releases the masters under the accompanying law of service at the sixth initiation, and they still are masters at that point, into a wider field of experience with all the divine assets and qualities so developed within them that they know that their equipment is adequate to the undertaking and that they can, without hesitancy and concern, take the next required steps. So this is really the guarantor of achievement. And if we could have ourselves the faith that all of these things will come to pass, we could concentrate upon the service of the moment without that kind of pressureful urging forward which prevents full concentration. Really in an utterly eternal situation, forever in the midst of eternal duration, one can, in certain states of consciousness, wonder how there can ever be any rush when there can never be an ending to our presence, nor has there been a beginning. Those are such profound matters that they can require our contemplation for lives and lives to come, and I suppose on a higher turn of the spiral, even as higher beings, they will require our contemplation, whatever contemplation is like in those higher states. So the masters know what is possible at any time and are not pushing for what is not possible in that time. The masters know what is possible at any given time in the present cycle and do not push for the impossible under present circumstances, which does not mean they do not modify circumstances and push circumstances forward towards the desirable archetypal relation. It's just that they do not push forward beyond the appropriate point. In other words, let us say, why push for the achievements of the fifth round in a fourth round situation? We cannot make the judgment day appear faster than it will appear. Why push for that which will occur upon the fifth chain while we are in the fourth chain, and so forth? They know the appropriateness of the application of energies. They know what is possible for them. And they seek the fullness of that possibility, of course, but they do not seek to institute that which cannot be instituted under the present conditions of matter-substance. All right, we move on. Never having really achieved the fullness of explanation, but we always must move on under these particular circumstances. It is hard for the disciple struggling with glamour and illusion to realize that the higher initiations are free from all concern and from any emotional or self-centered reactions to the work which lies ahead or to the form side of manifestation. All right. This gives us a hint as to what we do not know, and perhaps opens the door to some glimmer of what we might know. It is hard for the disciple, and as disciples we are still struggling with various glamours and illusions, maybe even at the third degree. Not all illusion is ended, not until the 9th degree we're told, and then who can say it really ends? It ends with respect to the cosmic physical plane, perhaps. So it's hard for the disciple struggling with glamour and illusion to realize that the higher initiations are free from all concern and from any emotional or self-centered reactions. Why? Because, you know, the usual sense of lower ego is dissipated, and the higher initiate is differently identified. So from any emotional or self-centered reactions to the work which lies ahead, the work is simply done not for the sake of the achievement of the initiate, but done for the sake of the larger plan and purpose within the larger being in which the initiate works, or to the form side of manifestation that will eventually work out if all is taken care of inwardly. It is well nigh impossible for the neophyte, and that we are all that, even though we study these advanced books. It is well nigh impossible for the neophyte to vision a time when he will be free from all reactions engendered by life on the cosmic physical planes, and from all the limitations of life in the three worlds. Well, the Master perhaps is not entirely free from all reactions engendered by life. Here I left out an important word. On the dense cosmic physical plane. Oh my, you see, if you don't read carefully what can happen. I was trying to figure out what in the world would be meant by that. And now I see that he's talking about the same thing. He's talking about the three lower worlds as if they were the dense cosmic physical plane. The Master is indeed the Master of life on the dense cosmic physical plane, that is, in the lower three worlds, including the world of the higher mind, the higher three levels of the mental plane. So we cannot imagine the Master's consciousness here, and we are free from all reactions to this non-principled in the cosmic sense, this non-principled density. Free from all limitations of life in the three worlds. Well, we have not even achieved full mental polarization. So indeed, there is some time to go. DK is presenting for us a very large picture for our lives to come, and we have to take a deep breath and participate patiently in the process outlined. Today, aspiration provides a constant source of anxious questioning, of painful deliberations, and of a high voltage spiritual ambition with their consequent limitations and moments of sensed failure and lack of achievement. So this is how it is now, but distinct. For disciples, this is how it is now, but is a response distinct from that which the Master has. The Master has left all this behind, knowing that even this so-called spiritual responsiveness, maybe it really isn't that, is a form of self-centered attitude. The decentralization of the Master is something we cannot. We think of decentralization in certain terms, but for the Master, it is a much greater thing, inconceivable to us. How about spelling that word in the right way? Decentralization. We think of decentralization in certain terms, right? So the Master has left all this behind, knowing that even this so-called spiritual responsiveness in the lower three worlds, maybe it's not really spiritual, maybe only spiritual responsiveness is occurring in the worlds of the spiritual triad or the cosmic ethers. Because when he uses the word so-called, he's indicating that it's not the genuine article. The Master has left all this behind, knowing that even this so-called spiritual responsiveness is a form of self-centered attitude. And, you know, within the lower three worlds, okay, let's just say when we are victim of the lower three worlds, we cannot be truly decentralized, nor can we avoid the self-centered attitude. We think of decentralization in certain terms, but for the Master it's a much greater thing. Okay, eventually, and when disciples should take courage and hope from this statement, all this agonizing reaction to the spiritual urge will be left behind. All I can do is sigh, right? Maybe some of us are sighing together. Eventually, all this agonizing reaction to the spiritual urge will be left behind. Sometimes, you know, I'm very strongly under Saturn at the moment. It's said to be the god of opportunity, but it's working out in a very physical way in my life, and I get very frustrated because I have this constant spiritual urge, you know, this constant urge to be bringing increasing clarity in the minds of others to what the Tibetan has said, and certainly increasing clarity in my own mind. I'm constantly prompted forward to do these things. And it is agonizing. It is the spiritual urge facing karmic necessity and the feeling of being somewhat trapped in material karma. I have to realize, maybe we all have to realize and take courage and hope from the statement that this agonizing reaction to the spiritual urge, in my case, what I cannot accomplish, will be left behind, because still it's a self-centered attitude, and still the time sense is dominant. The personality knows that time is short, and when one is responding in this way, one is not living in the eternal now, and the entry into timelessness is not yet very successful. So, you know, I have in front of me what is outlined for me, and I'm sure that many of us, as we read these words and think about them, will realize the condition that we're in. The Master knows the law, and with law comes the factor. Here enters the factor of inevitability, and is entirely free from any consideration of the time equation. Except, you know, Master DK is telling us urgently that we must be aware of the time equation. That's the seeming paradox here. The Master knows that all will be fulfilled, but he has to speak to human beings who are still very subject to time and must achieve in a certain time certain things if the plan is to move forward in a timely manner. I'm remembering, was it this author, is it Elizabeth Cooper Oakley or something like that, writing on the Master R, and the Master R is speaking to one of his possible disciples at the time of the French Revolution and asking him to make a decision. The man hesitated to make what was probably to be a more selfless decision, and the Master R said, well, Count de Saint-Germain said, now it's too late. And that was just due to the hesitation of the man in making the decision. So obviously time does control the life of the average man, and certainly even the life of the average aspirant and disciple. But the master knows the law of inevitability and is entirely free from any consideration of the time equation, certainly as it might compromise his functioning or produce any undue sense of self-concern as far as he himself is concerned. I should have gone on, right? He only regards time as it may affect the workings of the plan in the three worlds. He knows inevitably that he will achieve. He knows something of the destiny of the monad, you know? The master knows something of let's call it monadic destiny, and has a great trust and assurance in the inevitable working out of the law. So we might pause even right there to realize the difference between the time-bound sense under which we function and the type of consciousness within which a master functions, free from any consideration of the time equation as regards himself. In other words, he is not pushing forward for his own achievement, realizing the inevitability of that achievement and being identified with the whole in which he lives and moves and has his being. All those he's should be capitalized in my usual approach. He lives and moves and has his being. Okay. I like to give due respect through capitalization, although sometimes I capitalize and it's not a question of respect, but just of emphasis. Okay. So he only regards time, as does the time-space schedule of the planetary logos, is not referring to his own achievement, but is referring to the achievement of those lives which he supports and which are still subject to time and space, seeking as he is to bring them into as fulfilled expression of the plan, his plan, as may be possible, really his purpose. So this really, the agonizing reaction to the spiritual urge will be left behind. It is often the sense of not accomplishing what one must within a period of time. That is often what this agony is based upon, and it's certainly based upon the identification still as an individual who can accomplish. Now, increasingly, it is the accomplishment of the whole that is our concern, because we have some distance from our individual identity and a much greater identification with the wholeness in which we are immersed. In other words, we actually believe and identify as that whole, and our identification as the lesser human being has considerably faded. Well, this is quite a task to institute that type of identification. You know, I am the individual, I am the group, I am the I am the hierarchy, I am the planetary logos, and so forth. We even reach towards I am the one, but our apprehension of what that means, at least in my view, is faint compared to what it will be when we actually are a planetary logos, an amalgamated planetary logos in the presence of many other beings who have fused with us to become the planetary logos. Our identity just changes. Eventually we are the one universal logos, and right now everything seems to be other. There are so many other beings, and we do not realize our identicality with them. But eventually we will fuse and blend and become ever identified as ever greater wholes until we are identified as the one and only universal whole, that of the expression of the universal logos. But that is a long time ahead. All right. Well, where are we now? The dual existence of the Master involves what we might call the two poles. So not the dual life, but the dual existence. And what are these two poles? That of the monadic consciousness, whatever that may be, however full that may be, and that of the self-created form, which he may use as a member of the hierarchy and as a worker in the three worlds of human enterprise. So here DK defines it. It's the Maya Virupa. It's monad and Maya Virupa. So the poles are monad and Maya Virupa. And I was, trying to grasp this earlier, and I see I was not too incorrect about this. But of course, the Master need not reappear in the lower three worlds through the ordinary process of generation to which all human beings below the fourth degree are subject. In other words, we have to reappear through the normal processes of birth and through parents and so forth. It is a type of slavery in a way, and much more is available to us through the active will and Kriya Shakti once we have achieved emancipation from the human kingdom. Some friends of mine, when they think, oh, coming back in that way, and they don't want to come back in that way. But mostly the process is unconscious, and of course there is no immediate choice. So anyway, the dual existence of the Master involves what we might call the two poles, that of monadic consciousness. And notice he is using the word consciousness in respect to the monad. Sometimes he talks about the transcending of the idea of consciousness, and then he uses words like awareness, but just always look at the context in which these words are used. So monadic consciousness is one pole, the higher pole, and whatever may be, whatever that may be, whatever fullness that may be, whatever ray it may be conditioned by, and that of the self-created form, which he may use as a member of the hierarchy and a worker in the three worlds of human enterprise. So this is very different from soul and personality, is it not? These two poles involving the Master are very different from the poles involving the disciple, i.e. soul and personality. I would here remind you, he says, that there are many groups and types of masters, broadening our conception here and decentralizing us, and most of them are quite unknown to occult students, either from their work or from rumor, occult rumor has it, or from knowledge of the many evolutionary processes of which the human is only one. So what's the basic idea here? There are more masters than we know about, many more. And there are certain masters who have made the sacrifice of letting their names and functions be known by humanity, so I suppose they are constantly importuned, and they have related themselves to a sphere of experience which for them is very limiting, and all of this out of the bodhisattvic impulse, the saving impulse, especially those on the path of earth service. So not all the masters work in the three worlds, okay? Not all the masters need or possess physical bodies because there are other places to work and the physical body is not necessarily required. Not all the masters have their faces turned towards the realm of dark light. Well, that's in a way, the Cancerian realm. It's the dark light of Cancer and has to do with the dense aspect of the cosmic physical plane, but many face for eons towards the clear, cold light of spiritual existence. This is such an amplification of an understanding of what the masters are. Our conceptions are so limited. I would here remind you that there are many groups and types of masters, most of them quite unknown to occult students, either from their work, we don't understand their work, it's beyond our ken, or from rumor. There's so much about various masters that is rumored, whether or not it's accurate, or from knowledge of the many evolutionary processes of which the human is only one. For instance, the Deva kingdom. There are masters working with the Deva kingdom. Master Serapis at this time is one of those that is working particularly with the Deva kingdom, we are told. Not all the masters work in the three worlds. Not all the masters need or possess physical bodies. Not all the masters have their faces turned towards the realm of dark light, but many face for eons towards the clear, cold light of spiritual existence. And this does not mean that the latter type of master is more selfish than the masters who are facing the realm of dark light. We have to bring this light forward into a greater radiance, and this is the work of Vulcan, and this is the work of redemption within the lower three worlds, which is the realm of dark light. Not all the masters make or are required to make the sacrifices which work for the fourth kingdom in nature entails. So those masters who are working with us now undergoing a very great sacrifice. All right. So this is so important about gaining a wider perspective on the nature and scope of activity of the masters as a whole. We tend to limit our idea of who the masters are according to our familiarity, quasi-familiarity, with just a few of them. So not all the masters make or are required to make the sacrifices which work for the fourth kingdom in nature, entails. Not all souls, liberated or limited. Interesting, because the term soul is not just about consciousness within the causal body, as we see here. Not all souls liberated from consciousness within the causal body or limited constitute the kingdom of God in the sense that conveys to us. You know, what can we say here? The Tibetan's wider point of view is coming forward. How does he know these things? Well, he's in a position to know far more than we are, though he never claims to know all. Not all souls liberated or limited constitute the kingdom of God in the sense that the phrase conveys to us. The kingdom of God, the kingdom that we enter, a kingdom of service that we enter when we are subject to soul influence and attempt to serve our fellow human beings in the light of the soul. That term is limited to the soul which informs units of the human family. Not all the masters work under the great Buddha of activity who is responsible to Sanat Kumara for the plan working out in connection with humanity. Well, you know, this is probably the second Buddha of activity who is working in response and responsible to Sanat Kumara for the plan as humanity must express it. There are those who are working with the other kingdoms. There are those masters who work with the other kingdoms, maybe lower than man and perhaps higher. He works through, that is Sanat-Kumara, the three great lords. No, wait a second. That's this particular Buddha of activity, under the great Buddha activity, the second one. Later we will discuss more about the three Buddhas of activity. We did somewhat in a discussion in a treatise on cosmic fire. He works with the three great lords, the coordinators and directors, the Manu, the Mahachohan, and the Bodhisattva, the Christ. He works with the three great lords of the eternal ashram of Sanat-Kumara, but his two brothers have each of them an equally important work and are responsible as he is to the council chamber, but not responsible for humanity in the same way. And notice that the Buddhas of activity are considered brothers. What their form of brotherhood is, we can only imagine. The BOAS are considered brothers. Each of them also works through a triangle of energies with grouped subsidiary forces, working in 7 departments and differentiated also into 49 lesser departments, as is the ashram, which we call the hierarchy. So a higher reflection. Let's look at this. The Buddhas of activity work through a higher, well, it's not really reflection, is it? It's a higher correspondence to ashramic differentiation into 3, 7, and 49. So each of them, that is, let's keep this in mind, the Buddhas of activity works through a triangle of energies with a grouped subsidiary forces working in 7 departments and differentiated also into 49 lesser departments, as is the ashram, which we call the hierarchy. So this is, we are dealing here with shambolic differentiation, because the Buddhas of activity are Kumaras, planetary Kumaras, and they are members of the council chamber. Forget not, says the Tibetan, there are many hierarchies, and the human hierarchy is but one. Every time we look at the creative hierarchies, we have to think of their numerical differentiations. All the creative hierarchies have their numerical differentiations. What the Tibetan is giving us here works towards our decentralization. All the hierarchies have their 9 phases of initiation, and they have their 7 types of form. They have their higher and lower beings within them, and these higher and lower beings work through numerically differentiated groups. So this is interesting about the Buddhas of activity. They all have equal functions of equal importance, though not the same functions. They are all responsible to the council chamber, in which they are at this time permanent members. And each of the Buddhas of activity has his method, his numerical method of distribution through triangles, septenaries, and groupings, which are 49-fold. This 49-fold grouping is important. It does relate to the groups of solar angels who eventually become lords of a ray or lords of a planetary ray, i.e. planetary logoi. 3, 7, 49, we can't leave 12 out of that either. The whole theme is one of great complexity. as the Tibetan views it, and certainly as we would view it. Perhaps he's viewing it from our perspective and thinking of how complex it would be to us. The whole theme is one of great complexity and yet at the same time so simple that when the simplicity of the planetary constitution is truly grasped and the analytical disputations of the concrete mind are overcome, as they are not in the usual philosophy department of a university, the liberated master enters a world of spiritual endeavor which is free from forms and symbols or the veils which hide the basic truth and the underlying mystery. Well, we have been told essentially this, that initiation is simplification. So we seem to have so many different numbers, numerical relationships, and so forth, that we cannot easily fathom the simplicity, and we argue about it with our limited, concretizing, fragmenting minds. But the liberated master, and who is that really? Is the liberated master a Chohan, one who identifies as the monad? He enters a world of spiritual endeavor which is free from forms, which are always limiting, and symbols which point only toward certain arrangements, or veils which obscure the truth. So a type of freedom is coming, and this freedom may occur in relation to the name revelation. Of course, we're told that the revelation accorded to the master of the fifth degree has a lot to do with the revelation of the 7 or 9 cosmic paths and the paths, the nature of those paths, and some inkling as to the path that the master will find it correct to choose. But there are other types of revelations as well, and let's just say the revelation that comes with freedom from the complexity caused by a fragmenting consciousness. Okay. Being is simple. Well, it's impartite. It's the utterly simple something. Being has no parts. It is ever the same. That doesn't mean the beings or existences are ever the same, but the essence at the heart of all of them is simple, free. Free because unconstrained by other. So let's just say unconstrained by any other. There is no other. Unlimited, boundless, and unimpeded. And in that world, the master moves and works. In my view, there is an increasing realization of this, I gather. Otherwise, the consciousness of, let's say, a planetary logos would not be higher than the consciousness of a master. So there is increasing apprehension of this free, simple, unlimited, unimpeded way of life. But at least in that world, and sufficiently, the master does work. So here Master DK is talking about being and becoming. And becoming, has more to do, I think, with the third ray, a combination of being, becoming with the second, and maybe being itself more related to the first ray, though we cannot say that being is per se any of the divine aspects, even though in a way the first ray mode of demonstration is closest to it. Just as the will is the first factor or ability to emerge from the egg, the monadic egg. Becoming is complex, imprisoning, limited, and subject to hindrances. You see, in the world of becoming, there are others, and the others can constrain. When there are no others, there is no constraint. The only constraint would be self-constraint. And in that world, the disciple and the lesser initiates live and move and have their being. Well, this is so, I want to just somehow highlight this, make this large and important. Whether I ever review it or not, I don't know, but here it is. Being is simple, free of constraint by others which do not exist, unlimited, unbounded, unimpeded, because it takes others to impede. And the Master is realizing that that world exists, and in it, or in a reasonable apprehension of that world, he moves and he works. Becoming, well, the world of being exists, but becoming continues in this long evolutionary journey in any universe. So the Master is anchored in the realization of being, but is still involved in becoming, it seems to me, but of a much higher type. Becoming is complex, so many parts and pieces, so many fragments, caused by partial perceptions which arise because of partial identifications, thinking we are something less and therefore perceiving less. Becoming is complex, imprisoning, limited, and subject to hindrances. Well, that's the world in which we live. And we look forward to the simplicity of the world of being. Although, as we go and considering, let us say, what Sanakumara or the planetary logos has to handle, we would consider that type of administration most complex, far so intricate that we could have no true conception of how to manage it. So simplification occurs, but at the same time the ability to handle what the human being would consider to be a staggering complexity. So anyway, in this world of becoming, we disciples, we lesser initiates, let us say, live and move and have our being. A master works simultaneously in two worlds or state of awareness, that is, in that related to pure existence, to the untrammeled life of the planes controlled by the monad, and also by the hierarchy. So we work simultaneously in two worlds, a state of awareness, that is, that related to pure existence, to the untrammeled life of the planes controlled by the monad, I guess, is that the sixth plane from below and maybe the seventh plane from below, and also by the hierarchy. There is naught but the plan that engrosses his attention, and certainly not, he would say, certainly not any self-concern in the usual sense. He identifies with the larger whole. His self has become something else. He deals safely with the simplicity of Shambhala and its sphere or aura of influence, and with the field of relationships which are nurtured from the ashram of the Christ. I'm here quoting one of the masters who was endeavoring to explain to a disciple the simplicity of the life which a master expresses. So the planes of the monad, the sixth and seventh planes, and then all the sub-monadic planes, which are planes of relative complexity, they are the field of relationships which are nurtured from the ashram of the Christ. And that is those 5 lower planes. So we have a kind of division here, a kind of division working out as 2 and 5. And this represents the world of being and the world of becoming. The world of becoming are the Brahmic worlds from the atmic plane on down, and they are worlds of complexity, but into Shambhala the monad enters, or is already in a way a resident, and the monad sees things whole and sees the essence and identifies as the essence. And maybe this is even more so for the liberated monad into the sea of fire once the monadic vehicle can be evaded, or once it is destroyed and we have the liberated volatile essence. The volatile essence really is the essence of the monad, and it flies when liberated, volare, it flies when liberated from its encapsulation. So the Master works simultaneously in 2 states of awareness, the pure existence of the monad and that untrammeled life, and also by the hierarchy. To the untrammeled life of the planes controlled by the monad, and also by the hierarchy, and presumably the hierarchy is controlling the 5 lower planes of existence. So there is naught with the plan engaging, engrossing his attention, and for the Chohan perhaps not with the purpose. He deals safely, as we cannot, with the simplicity which is Shambhala. That simplicity is very destructive in a way of the relationships through which we must pass and which we must master. We cannot move into simplicity until we have mastered the necessary degree of complexity. So he deals safely with the simplicity which is Shambhala and its sphere or aura of influence, and with the field of relationships which are nurtured from the ashram of the Christ. So this is, let us call this number 2, and let's call this number 1. With both of these, the Master deals. So he deals safely with the simplicity which is Shambhala and its sphere or aura of influence, and, quote, with the field of relationships which are nurtured from the ashram of the Christ. That ashram is largely focused on the Buddhic plane, but also spans the atmic and, to an extent, the higher mental plane for some scientific types. And DK is quoting one of the masters who was endeavoring to explain to a disciple the simplicity of the life which a master expresses. And that is our main learning here, that as we rise through the higher initiations, a type of simplicity supervenes which at present we cannot fathom. Well, friends, where are we now? We have not finished. No, well, we are almost finished. We have 7 minutes to go, so I suppose, see, when I look here at the science of the Antikarana, and it does last about 90 pages, I tend to want to treat that separately, because it is such a vast section. So that's really what I'm going to do. This is the end of Ray's and Initiation's webinar commentary program number 24, and it has taken us from page 436 to 441, and we'll be beginning with Ray's and Initiation webinar commentary, program 25, and pages 441 to what? Obviously, this is going to take us a good long time to work through the science of the Antikarana. I have taught this in classes, and I have, I think, a lot of notes concerning it, but I oftentimes like to take a fresh start and not necessarily deal with the limitations of previous notes. So while I may be missing in some important things, other fresh ideas may come to my mind. And this represents RBS, world of being and the world of becoming. So we have the dual existence of the master involving the monadic levels and the 5 worlds of human evolution. Those are the 2 poles. And we have the dual life of the disciple representing largely the soul and maybe perhaps a bit of the spiritual triad and the personality life. Soul and personality, or perhaps a little bit higher triad and soul-infused personality. But when it comes to the master, the Brahmic worlds, the 5 lower worlds of Atma on down, are one pole, the lower pole, and the monadic livingness, the monadic being, is the higher pole. And this increasingly as the master becomes not only the master of wisdom, but the Chohan, and also the Chohan of the 7th degree. So what have we moved through here? You know, it's such deep material, and I have no hope of assimilating this. Much of this has been on the initiate consciousness and the idea of achieving the ability to live somewhat in the eternal now and to achieve entering the world or the consciousness of timelessness, the true initiate consciousness. Basically what Master DK is doing here, he is describing the initiate consciousness in ways that he has not done before. The assurance of the master according to the law of inevitability is discussed. It is a deep mine of trust, as Master Moria would say, and the anguished response to the spiritual urge is left behind. We move constantly towards greater and greater simplicity as we rise. On page 518 of Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, DK was talking to a disciple who should, in certain ways, have been approaching Shambhala. I think he was a first-rate monad. He did not succeed, but DK really talked about the simplicity of Shambhala on that page, to which I often refer, so you may want to go to that. The discrimination in the life of the master between being and existence, considered as being, contrasted with becoming or appearing subject to certain qualities or qualifications. That's another important distinction. I'm looking at what I really have outlined here. So basically he's telling us more about the life of the master, and from a different angle than we may have heretofore appreciated. The 3rd initiation and the completion of the 1st phase of the Antikarana per se. There are other and higher phases in the system of alignments. And basically, freedom from time is here discussed more than freedom from space, though a type of freedom from space is also possible if space is not considered in terms of the absolute. All right, so I think we've reached the point with that little bit of a summary of matters too profound to absorb, to say our great invocation. And it will take us a little beyond 1 minute, but or 2 hours, but okay. We will do so. From the point of light within the mind of God, Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, we will get into this amazing subject of the Antikarana. I think I have some writings on it in various places, but this will be perhaps a more inclusive and spontaneous approach. So we'll be into Rays and Initiations webinar commentary number 25 shortly. Till then, all the best.